We'd like to begin by acknowledging that we're meeting on the lands of the Gwich'in settlement area. As we gather here today, let us remember the significance of this land of the Gwich'in people and commit to working towards a respectful and collaborative relationship with all Indigenous peoples. Item number 2, adoption of the agenda. Any comments? None. Declaration of conflict of interest or pecuniary interest, anyone? Item 4, delegations, presentations, or petitions. 4.1 is the RCMP report. I guess we have nobody present, but any comments on it? Nothing. 4.2, I guess we have representatives presenting on THARP house update. So if you'd like to come and sit at the table there, introduce yourself, turn on the microphone and introduce yourselves, you can start.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Good evening. My name is James Tolley, and I'm the Director of Policy and Planning for Housing and NWT, and I'm part of the delegation that includes to my left Haley Nadeau-Young from the Department of Health and Social Services. She's the Director of Mental Wellness and Addictions Recovery. We're also joined by Bronwyn Rourke on the Zoom call. She is with Housing NWT and is the Manager of Capital Planning and Design. We're also joined by 2 members of the IRC, Sam Dick, the Intergov and Major Projects Advisor, right? And then as well as Megan Etter, the Director of Health and Wellness. Right? All right, so we are here to, we're coming to Town Council ahead of any application to the town as far as the Transitional Housing for Addictions Recovery, also known as THARP. THARP is going to be described a little bit in more detail by Haley and others as we go on, but my role here is to assure the town that this is a priority of the government and of the GWT, as well as working with the IRC and others to come and ahead of any need for applications to give a brief or a detailed overview as possible of the project so that there is general understanding of what the project is prior to moving forward to any next steps. One of the biggest things to take in mind or keep in mind about this project is it's not a medical facility. It is a facility that is supervised, but it is not a medical facility. So essentially, we're here to present on the building, any need for zoning, as well as the services and the partnership. And then we're open to any questions, and questions can be either tonight or in written form, and we'll continue to come back as much as the town needs us to come here to work with you all. So I'll hand it over to Haley first.
Thanks, James. And thanks for having us this evening. So this evening, as James mentioned, we're going to provide a little bit of an overview on transitional housing for addictions recovery, how we got here. Then I'll turn it over to Megan to talk a little bit about the proposed programming that they hope to offer. And then I'll turn it over to Bronwyn to talk a little bit more about the house proper and sort of the work. So just to set the context a little bit, so during the last legislative assembly, Health and Social Services and Housing NWT were tasked with increasing access to transitional housing for addictions recovery. So for those individuals who completed either Southern addictions treatment or completed some sort of land-based or community-based programming. So transitional housing for addictions recovery is really a temporary accommodation for individuals to help support them to transition slowly back into independent living at their own pace. And typically it includes some sort of skills development, training, education, and supports to help them go back to their community and have an opportunity to practice the skills that they learned while in treatment. So one of the first things that we did when we started working on this project is we wanted to find out what community organizations might be interested in delivering this type of programming. So in December of 2021, the department did an expression of interest, and we heard from 4 community organizations. So we heard from one in Hay River, Inuvik, Fort Good Hope, and one in Yellowknife. From there, we started working closely with these individuals to look at what kind of programming they were hoping to offer and to get a sense of what the resource requirements might be so that we could help build that into our business planning process. We also worked to develop a THARP advisory committee. So this was made up of, it was an interdepartmental committee made up of representatives from a wide range of departments. They helped us look at the service delivery models that the community organizations were providing us, helped provide us with some insights on the development of some draft standards for this kind of programming. And they also helped us to identify any potential interdepartmental collaboration or support for this kind of programming. So through this work, we have developed some draft standards for this program. They are quite high level, recognizing that programming in each of these communities is offered by a variety of different organizations, and they will look quite differently depending on the community or region's needs. But really the key thing to focus on is that all of these programs will have a focus on community inclusion, on skill development, and helping people ease back into the community in a supported way. So looking at our current status, so we have been able to identify suitable locations for THARP programs both in Yellowknife and in Inuvik, and they've been both been purchased by Housing WT. We've also been successful in securing operational funding for the operation of both of these programs, and they are reflected in our current 2024-2025 budget. In terms of next steps, in terms of how it relates to the Inuvik project specifically, we will be looking at some point in the future to come forward to town council for zoning approval. And with your approval, our intention would then be to complete some minor renovations to the building, and then to continue to work closely with the IRC to prepare the program. And I'll turn it over to Megan to talk a little bit about the controls program.
Just on a very high level, the plan that we have there, obviously this is for folks, as Haley mentioned, coming back from treatment programs, whether it be in the south or land-based. So the idea is to have a safe space for young adults, in particular men, returning from addictions treatment to have temporary housing. What we often hear is they don't want to come back, and so a lot of them are staying. We are currently at IRC supporting quite a few beneficiaries to stay in the south and be in these similar types of housing scenarios, because they don't have a safe place to come back to. So the idea is to have this here, and it'll have programs inside the center itself with permanency planning for housing, life skills, coaching, mentorship, there'll be like case management, things like that. It is a sober living facility. We're looking at a maximum of 2 years staying there, but likely it won't be that long. We'll be helping to transition them into getting on housing lists, etc. The idea is to have a lot of community workshops, so things like AA, NA, different types of things like that could happen there, but also whatever the skills the individuals have a need for. So maybe it's cooking, maybe it's, finance, whatever their needs are. Every individual will have their own case plan. So we'll bring those skills from the community into the house, as well as integrating them back out into the community, whether it's looking for work, anything like that. And then lastly, obviously IRC has a lot of other programs available, so we will be working in partnership with the Health and Wellness Division very closely for things like Project Jewel, which is our On the Land program, and any other connection to community services, whether it be counseling, if that's a need or desire, like I said, housing, income support, getting them into education programs, if that's what their goal and desire is on their sobriety journey. So it will be very person focused, but the overall plan is to offer these within the space, but also integrating back into the community.
Yes, I'll turn it over to Bronwyn now.
Great, thank you. Can everyone hear me okay? You can hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, fantastic. Okay, well, I just thought I would start the presentation with a code review, just to let you know where we're coming from and how we're approaching the code aspect of this building. So the applicable building code is the National Building Code 2020 version. And Housing NWT hired Pontem Group and a building code consultant servicing group to do an independent code review of the layout of the building and the program and all of the services. So I've just for interest, I put an image of the sister project in Yellowknife. That's the transitional housing project, which is currently in renovation right now. So next slide, please. So this is just some of the data that the consultants put together. So it's a group C, it's a residential occupancy, it's a single story, it's about 230 square meters. Combustible construction is allowed and sprinklers are not required, nor are they in the current house. So next slide, please. So Pontem reviewed the program and they noted that there's no alcohol, medication, or healthcare treatment provided to the residents during their stay. The facility strictly operates as a residential establishment without any medical treatment. So that's fundamental from a code review. So there's no care provided. It's not classified as a care facility. And because there will not be any substance abuse, there's no alcohol provided to tenants. That means tenants will be able to vacate the building if there is an emergency that comes up. So the conclusion was that the building should be constructed as per the requirements in Part 9, Housing and Small Buildings, and that no occupancy change is needed. Next slide, please. So next, I'll share our review of the zoning bylaws, and I'll also introduce the location of the project and yeah, just show you where it is. So the address is 22 King Minya Road, and it's on the east side of town. If you kind of zoom in to sort of a closer street view, you can see it's right on the corner of Dolphin Street, and it's right adjacent to Corner Store, and it's just a street away from the Friendship Center. Next slide, please. So having a look at the zoning bylaw, that site fits right into R1, low density residential. Next slide, please. So this is just a snapshot from the building bylaw. So residential low density, Housing NWT determines that this fits under the definition of a single detached dwelling. And we looked at the definition of a group home as well, because we thought that is worth considering. And the definition speaks to residential facility that provides resident care to individuals who are in need of adult supervision or assistance and who are provided supervision and services in accordance with their individual needs. May also be identified as senior citizen home or long-term care home. So as there's no care or adult supervision, it's not a senior citizen home or long-term care home, then it fits into single detached dwelling. Next slide, please. Okay, so I just want to walk you through the renovation and tell you a little bit about this property and this house that we purchased. So there's a little image of it on the screen, and amazingly, the unit fits into the program really well. We just need to do a couple of minor upgrades, and that includes making the unit completely barrier-free accessible. So we're going to provide ramp access, we're going to provide a barrier-free washroom, and make sure that there's a bedroom that has all of the distances and space needed for someone in a wheelchair. Then we're gonna include an HRV, so make sure that there's good air quality coming into the building. A new back deck is needed, and then there's just some minor electrical and mechanical upgrades, and we're going to include some privacy screens and a fence so that people have private space to focus on their healing journey. Next slide, please. So this is a floor plan showing the layout and the renovations. You can see that there are 5 bedrooms and a small office. And then there's a communal space, a large kitchen, a large dining space, and there's a front deck and a back deck. And we'll be building a fence in the backyard there, so that will be a nice private area, private outdoor area. And we're also going to include a screen on the front deck. So, you know, just a nice wood lattice type screen so people can enjoy the front of the deck as well. And that's it. So you can go to the next slide, just saying thank you. Thank you so much for your time. And any questions?
Thank you for the presentation. Does council have any questions or concerns? Councillor Wainman.
Is your capacity is gonna be 5? Is there plans in the future from one?
The idea is we'll have them as single bedrooms, but if we're finding that there's a huge need for more, the bedrooms are large enough to fit 2 single beds to double in size at this time.
How many employees are we, and what's their qualifications and trainings?
There will always be someone on site for just general building supervision. It's not so much supervision of the individuals, but the building itself. As well as a manager for programs, a life coach, and a program coordinator as full-time staff.
All right, we really need a place like this. We need a bigger place, but we'll start anywhere. I think it's awesome that when someone's stepping forward and doing this. And our community is much needed this for several reasons. I'm sure everyone that lives here knows. And we're really happy that it's coming forward, but I'd really like to see it grow too. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Moving on, item 5, public questions.
Just one second.
Yes.
Right, Elena, signed off because she was in conflict.
Right.
I just need to text her to sign off.
Right, Alana let me know previous to the meeting that she was declaring a conflict, so could you go back, Kevin? Let me know when she's back.
She's back.
Okay. Item 5, public question period. We have no public left. Item 6.1, the minutes of the June 22nd, 2024 council meeting. Any comments? None. Item 7.1, the actions items list. Any questions, comments? Nothing. 8.1, new business. Contribution agreement with GNWT for O&M funding. Be it resolved, the Inuvik Town Council approves the contribution agreement with the GNWT for O&M funding in the amount of $1,988,607 is up by 199,000 million over last year. Any? Moving on, 8.2, water sewer funding in the amount of $1,044,000, which is $101,000 more than last year. Any questions? 8.3. Recognition of changing the human resources policy, HR 012, Article 201, to add designated paid holidays for beneficiaries of local land claim. Includes a Witchin land claim agreement on April 22nd and the newly held final agreement on June the 5th. Any comments? Councillor Devlin.
Yes, we'd asked the administration to take it back and come up with possibly a generic, use a bit more generic language. And I note that on the copy that we received here, that language, we don't have the option of looking at that as an amendment, as a proposed amendment. And so I know I did email the SAO and the mayor last week with a proposed amendment to it. So can we speak to that? Thank you.
Just keep in mind, Councillor Devlin, this is for local indigenous groups. The land claims, the only two we have are Witchin and Inuvik.
I appreciate that.
Anybody else who has a land claim agreement is not in Inuvik.
I appreciate that. The role of a municipal do not necessarily cater to special interest groups. And while I realize that Witchin and Inuvik are the backbone of our community here, they still, in and of itself, are special interest groups. And all I've asked for is not to take away any of this benefit from them at all. I'm just asking for the language to be changed so that all of our indigenous staff can celebrate even. Right now, the language suggests that if you're indigenous and you're not New Valley Witchin, you don't get to celebrate any day. And that's the point I'm trying to make is I'm not trying to take anything away from anybody. I'm trying to include people here.
So then we should be recognizing, for example, residents of the Inuvik land claim.
We should be recognizing, and to your point, we should be allowing them to celebrate a land claim day. Now, if we don't want it to be tomorrow, July 9th, which is Nunavut Day, can we give them the opportunity to take part in either Witchin or Nunavut Day? I'm not asking them to take a special day off. We're just looking at land claimants getting a special day. And as a municipality, it's not any rational basis review suggests that we could be potentially legally not, discriminatory here. So I'm just trying to make sure that we're doing the correct thing. And I'm offering a generic amendment that doesn't take anything away from the intent or the purpose of this. It's just a language change, just to make sure that we're protecting ourselves.
Obviously, you've done your homework on this. Can you mention any other municipality that does this?
I don't, but I also don't know many municipalities that cater to special interest groups either. They know where the boundaries are. And again, we're not trying to take anything away from anybody here locally at all. We're just trying to make sure that we have, if we're going to offer a benefit to some of our employees, that we make sure that all our employees are treated equitably. And I don't think I'm asking too much here. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments?
Mayor?
Yeah, it's Councilor Miro here. Can I
Yes.
go ahead? Okay, so what the town has reflected is reflects what the GNWT does, where it's for people within the land claims within that area specifically. But Councillor Devlin, your wife is from Nunavut and she's a Inuit. So isn't this a conflict of interest for you because you're advocating for something that would give her a paid day off?
No, I'm making sure that our employees of the town of Inuvik are treated equally. I'm not asking anything for my wife, and I actually take offense to you bringing that up. Bring up Nunavut, Inuit, Nunavut Day. I brought up Nunavut Day just because it happens to be tomorrow. But I was suggesting that if we're going to make a policy that that's beneficial to our Indigenous staff, and we recognize all of our Indigenous staff. And we stop this creating these mini divisions in our community everywhere we can possibly do it. Why, when we talk about trying to be cooperative amongst all and everybody here. And as a municipality, we represent 100% of this town, not just the Gwich'in or the we represent everybody in this community. So our policies should reflect everybody in this community. And that's where I'm going on in special interests. I'm not trying to take anything away from anybody here. I'm just trying to include everybody that should be included. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Question.
Councillor Kulikowski.
I have a question, I think, Tony, I'm not sure if you'll know the answer, but so, like, how to look forward at this, then let's say someone's, Indigenous from another part of the country and they know that the date that their group celebrates, is it like, would it be basically they submit to their manager, this is my land claim day, or however it's worded, and then they would be provided that day off, like, whether they're Inuvik, Gwich'in, someone from Ontario, like, is that how you're suggesting it would be?
No, as I earlier suggested, I'm not suggesting that they take a specific November 16th for the Métis, June, July 9th for Inuit. No, I'm not suggesting that. I did suggest that they are still awarded a beneficiary day. They can be taken perhaps on the 22nd of April or the 5th of June, but that they also get a benefit of being a land claimant. Just because they're not from here doesn't mean that they don't contribute to our community, don't give as much, and should be able to celebrate a day. Doesn't need to be their day necessarily, but a day. I do have the language I suggested. May I read it into the record? Mayor?
Any other comments?
Sorry. Mayor, I just asked if I could read the suggested amendment into the record.
Yeah, you can go ahead.
Thank you. So the suggested language is, the town acknowledges and honors the important cultural holidays of Indigenous people living in our community. Indigenous land claim beneficiaries employed by the town will receive a day off on the anniversary of their respective land claim agreements. This day is not considered a statutory holiday. If an employee is scheduled to work on this day, they're entitled to a day off. If they're not scheduled to work, they'll not receive a day off. We changed that language to just ensure the April 22nd and June 5th. But all we did was just make it generic. We're just calling all Indigenous employees should be able to celebrate their respective land claims or a day.
If you'd like, you could present that as an amendment to the motion on Wednesday and we'll vote on it. Any other comments? Councillor Wayne.
So
We have.
Sorry.
That covers everybody on top of Inuvik Day, Gwich'in Day, and the National Indigenous Day covers everybody else, whatever region you're in. So why are we going to this extreme of this debate?
It's called equality for our staff, our employees. So that one employee doesn't get a benefit that another employee doesn't get. That's why we're suggesting this. Everyone gets the 21st off, Indigenous Peoples' Day. But again, we've got some employees that are gonna get an extra day, and I'm just trying to say, hey, why? Why are we creating these mini divisions all over the place where we don't have to, if we make language generic enough to be able to be acceptable to everybody and accept all of our people in our community?
Councillor Wayne.
Well, we have National Indigenous Day, Inuvik Day, Gwich'in Day. And if we were living in some other region, as in Nunavut, I'm sure they would have their day and we'd have Indigenous Day. I don't see how we should be changing everything. I'm not really arguing, I'm just trying to figure out what you're really trying to accomplish here.
For the Inuvik that work and live in Iqaluit, they get Nunavut Day off as well. Okay, that's my point. They get Nunavut Day off when they live in Iqaluit and they happen to be in Inuvialuit. The entire territory shuts down on that day. And so what I'm saying is, yes, on the other side, they do get that day off. Kurt?
Okay, you got examples of that? Because I know it's the first I heard of it, it'd be nice to know.
The government of Nunavut is shut down tomorrow, July 9th, every year. They celebrate Nunavut Day. If I am an Inuvialuit living in Iqaluit, and there are quite a few, chances are I am working for GN, or I'm working for a corporation that, an Inuit corporation that quite possibly should be shut down on Nunavut Day. So what I'm saying, Kurt, is that these benefits are interchangeable. Other communities do this. We happen to be a split community. So we're a little bit different here than another community out there. Again, we're not trying to take anything away. We're just trying to include everybody.
Any other comments?
Yeah, it's Councillor Mira. I'd like to point out that Nunavut is one land claim, while the Northwest Territories has many. And there's Indigenous people from other parts of Canada where there isn't a land claim day. So I think this is getting very complicated when our efforts here are to honor the two Indigenous groups that live and work in our area, the Inuvik and Miigwetsin being the predominant groups.
Thank you.
Not trying to say Patrick's Day.
Moving on.
Holiday for that.
9.1. Third and final reading of the bylaw to appoint Stefan Villeneuve as a bylaw enforcement officer. Any comments? Item 10, departmental updates, none tonight. Item 11.1, strategic priorities charts, any comments? None. Item 12, council concerns, anything tonight? Item 13, camera items for tonight? No.
Mayor,
Yeah.
Mayor Wood,
Yes,
over here.
The council concern, sorry.
yes.
I brought this up with, the fire chief, I guess 2 weeks ago about there being one work truck parked outside ARI, about the temperature, next to the temperature thing on Mackenzie. There's a completely different work truck that's been there for 3 or 4 days now over the weekend, parked in the same spot, making people need to boot around by a couple of feet into the intersection. So I'm not too sure what the attraction is of that particular spot on Mackenzie, but we're into a different truck, a different work truck there now. So I'm just hoping for us to.
Sorry. It'll start day one, because that's when we have to do it unless we get a report on the day that it's first noticed.
Thank you. Anything further? Councillor Wainman?
So
That-
it's not,
that'd be- People back there, they're working on. So there's a different welding truck there.
Does that need to be on the street though?
No, I don't think it needs to be on the street exactly, but I mean, they belong to the job site behind Science Institute.
Any further concerns?
yeah, it's Councillor Miro. Is it illegal to park there?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Is it illegal to park in front of the temperature sign at ARI?
Not that I'm aware of. Mr. Larman, would you like to comment?
No, as long as it's not parked there beyond 72 hours, it's been well.
Councillor Devlin?
Does it, Councilor Devlin, does it affect anything if you need to actually drive around it? Like if you actually need to get out of your lane by a foot or two to go around this thing, is that impeding traffic?
We have to take a look at it, but if it's allowed to be parked there, there's no parking signs, then it's perfectly legal to park on any given road.
I appreciate your attention to it. Thank you.
Any further concerns? Councillor Wainman?
All our walking trails down the Boot Lake Park and into the cemetery and everything are, they need some love. They need to be looked after. And we put a lot of money into building those. And I don't think they need to be rebuilt. I think they need to be raked and cleaned up. And our trails are quite busy with a lot of people. We should,
I believe that's already being looked at.
okay,
Councillor
I
Wainman.
haven't heard anything about it, haven't seen anything, so I'm just bringing it up to say that we put a lot of money into it, and we should do a little maintenance to make them pretty. Right. And another thing I'd like to bring up is we discussed this 72-hour parking bylaw, and we're supposed to change that. This was discussed 2 years ago about vehicles parking all over town, especially during construction season and work time. And the 72 hours is and the reason I bring it up is because we had an incident with the 72-hour bylaw. They knew the bylaw. So what they kept doing is, as soon as you go to deal with them, they leave and they come back next day, 72 hours starts again. So it's just a domino effect that we have to look at our bylaw and fix it so it's immediate, not 72 hours. Because that means anyone, and I mean anyone, semis, 5 tons, tow trucks, whatever want, can park anywhere they want side of the road and be an inconvenience or create an accident. So I would like to get this to the bylaw committee and fix that. Because it has come up before in our time plans. And I remember this clearly now that you bring it up, so we should.
Yeah, I remember it was a food truck parked
Yeah.
in front of the tractor.
Well, there's that, and then they call the bylaw, and there's other trucks, and there's semis that could park right downtown. There's nothing we can do in our bylaws, so something we need to fix.
Yeah.
Because I mean, we don't need to have any accidents. Thank you.
Mr. Norman,
Yeah, that's a good idea. We could actually do a review of the full downtown corridor area and just kind of see where the designated parking is right now, where angle parking is. And then potentially expand the no parking areas along there, just to account for things like that, where at a high traffic area where it is legal to park. And just to see if we want to, the council wants to limit the congestion in the downtown core area. Probably a good idea to do a full review.
It
Councilor
does,
Wayman,
it does include our parking. I'm starting to remember all this now from the Igloo Church, I think, to Max. I think that area is covered by that, but I think we talked about once upon a time to cover all of Main Street because it's not that big of a street. So it's something we should look at, and I think we should get rid of the 72 hours period and effective immediately. That's something that's rid of 1 hour, something, but 72 hours is too much.
It is. It happens exactly like you say, where people know what the bylaws are. So if you move it 10 feet, or across the other side, or we see it moving, then it's completely reset for that. But we can do a full analysis of it, and I think that's probably a good way to approach it. And we concentrate on the downtown core area and then kind of expand from there. So we can take a look at where parking is currently allowed, what that looks like under the current bylaw, and what the proposed bylaw would look like if we did not, perhaps.
Well, to add to that, we have, I'm just starting to remember all these things that were brought up years and years in the past, is we've got some houses that have vehicles all up and down the road. And there's too many people living in the houses and too many vehicles, and that's another bylaw. Let's do with the parking bylaw, the same thing. At 72 hours, so it doesn't, the bylaw really doesn't do anything. Except for a smart person that can outsmart it, which is pretty easy at 72 hours, so that's something we ought to look at for every street. And I mean, mainly focusing on Main Street though, but at the same time, there is some roads you can drive on that you're dodging vehicles parked everywhere on the side of the road. And that's just, as we grow more, as we get busier, we would like that to be cleaned up and our bylaw fixed.
you're right, Counselor. There seems to be a lot of long-term parking on residential streets as well, not just downtown. I know one vehicle on my street, for example, has been parked on the road for 3 months.
Just to speak further to that, if we get any complaints or anything else for like seeing a vehicle on a constant basis, if we find out about it, we will absolutely go and take a look as soon as we hear about it. And then we can start the timer, the official timer, and keep an eye on that just to make sure that people are at least rotating it for the bylaw. Or we can have a chat with them or potentially fine, just depending on what the situation is. I do want to add one further thing just about the trails as well. I can't speak to exactly what's being done on the trail, but we're doing improvements around the accesses to it. Just to fit ATV traffic and some other motorized vehicles. So, Daniel has, Director Dokulu has, ordered new signage and we're installing bollards as well. So we made sure that sorry, go ahead. Oh.
It's really hard to take traditional sledding and ATV trails and turn them into walking trails, okay? For 40 years, those trails have been there for snowmobiles, ATVs, people walking, and I know what you're trying to get at public safety and everything. And we all grew up here, and those trails are traditional snowmobile trails and quad trails and motorbike trails, and they've only been turned into walking trails in the last 10 years. It's great to have the walking trails, I totally agree, but trying to turn them into their bollards and everything is, they've had that before too, but in certain places on overpasses and walkways. I don't think it's a good thing or a bad thing that the trails are traditionally, every one of them are snowmobile trails.
Is that for like Boot Lake Trail as well?
Boot Lake Trail has always been a walking kind of like trail.
Okay.
Along the lake there.
Okay.
But the ones that go down through the bush, past Boot Lake and down towards the graveyard, those are all snowmobile trails.
Okay, we'll take a look just to make sure. I wouldn't mind just having a chat afterwards, perhaps, just so we can see exactly, so we're not cutting off. trails.
Well, I'm just saying it's, you know,
It's a
how they were
balance.
created a balance. They've been balanced pretty well already. I've seen people out there. It's been not a bad balance. The bootleg trail along the hill has always been a walking trail. It goes from, along the bootleg all the way to the park.
Yeah, no, okay, now I know you mean around the way and.
And you can't access bootleg or the trail across because the bridge is too narrow for four-wheelers. I don't know why I know that, but it is. And then in the wintertime, they're all used for snowmobile trails. People still walk and not as much, mind you, but and just wanted to share my info that they're shared trails.
That's great. I'll talk to Daniel about that as well, just because we are working on it together. We did want to make sure that we have like emergency access to it as well, so we can incorporate that as well, maybe with seasonal access. But there's some ways we can do that, to find a good balance, so.
Anyway, thank you.
I agree that there needs to be a balance because the reason why we're putting the balance up is a complaint that the mayor had received with regard to some ATV operators that were fairly rude and disrespectful of some of the walkers that were on the trail. So there will be a balance. There has to be a balance in terms of that, and that's definitely a good conversation to have, as well as some public notice as well.
Thank you, SAO. Chief Larson, when I mentioned the vehicle on my street, I did not mean to imply that bylaw wasn't doing their job. I think bylaw's doing a fantastic job, so
They are.
hopefully there was no misunderstanding there. Any other concerns? Seeing none, I need a motion to adjourn.